Welcome to another episode of Monster Monday from the Ready to Die channel. This series explores the design of a creature I have built for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. The stat block for this creature can be found over on the Monster Monday blog, as well as the Twitter and Discord, all of which are linked below. Based on requests from the Monster Monday Discord, this week features the Hypnosis Pokemon,
Drowzee.
as appropriate as it may be. Try not to get lulled to sleep by my sweet, dulcet tones as we discuss this hefty hypnotist. The first thing to figure out is Drowzee's level, which involved me looking at pertinent levels for this little dude. He evolves at level 26, and based on how I mapped out the levels last time, that means I didn't want to go over level 5, and that is ultimately where I settled. On top of this low level, the Sleepy Psychic isn't of superior stature, lending to the use of a small size for him. As for the beast trait, I considered building the Drowzee as an aberration, but the Baku, a creature that the Drowzee is based on and exists in Pathfinder 1st Edition, is classified as a magical beast, lending to the usage of that typing for it. Now, when it comes to stats, the Drowzee's highest stat is Special Defense, which is a little hard to replicate in Pathfinder. Most of the moves it learns are status effects or special attacks, which led to me building around the Spellcaster roadmap. With that concept in mind, let's take a look at the ability scores of our Dream-Devouring Drowzee. The Drowzee will be reliant on innate spells, and uses a high charisma to represent that, as that is most typically the stat that these spells scale off of. Related to its spellcaster design, it does also have a moderate wisdom, but is surprisingly equipped with a higher attack stat than special attack, which leads to it using a moderate strength as well. While the Drowzee doesn't have a ton of physical attacks, it apparently packs a bit of a wallop when it comes to them. Its remaining ability scores are low, with its dexterity the lowest positive bonus, based on its portly proportions. I settle on -2 for intelligence, as it is a beast, but maybe as part of its psychic powers, I feel as though it wouldn't be as low as usual. Now, while the Drowzee does have that moderate wisdom, it seems a little, well, drowsy, which is why I used a low perception bonus in this design. Since this is a creature that hunts others while they are sleeping, and that typically takes place at night, it uses dark vision, but I also wanted to give it a sense to sniff out what it actually eats, dreams. To that end, the Drowzee uses a dream scent ability that allows it to do precisely that, able to smell sleeping and dreaming creatures. As for its skills, it has a moderate athletics reflecting its stout strength, a moderate occultism to capture its casting capabilities, and then a high dream lore, as its preferred meal and a significant aspect of its kit. There's quite a bit to discuss when it comes to the Dour Drowzee's defenses, but we'll start by looking at just the numbers. As a caster, the Drowzee only has a moderate armor class, which plays a bit into its lower dexterity as well. While the Drowzee is out there slinging spells, it doesn't have any ranged options, and so it needs some survivability. For that, it uses a moderate amount of hit points, but at the high end moderate, honestly on its way to high. Looking at its weaknesses and resistances then, the Drowzee doesn't really have any standout elements in this regard, but psychic Pokemon are resistant to psychic attacks, which leads to the resistance to mental damage. Additionally, some Drowzee can come with the Insomnia ability, which prevents sleeping. As the Drowzee does actually sleep, it does go to bed at times, I didn't want to give it a full-on immunity to sleep, and simply gave it a bonus on saves against sleep effects instead. Speaking of saves, the Drowzee represents its special defense mostly through its high will save, which does further lean into its resistance to psychic attacks. To balance this, and stay in lane with the Spellcaster roadmap, both of its fortitude and reflex saves are low, which does kinda match with the ability scores I assigned it, though I also think maybe you could raise its fortitude to moderate without it being too broken, too dangerous, since this creature is a teensy bit beefier. Now, while there is a bit to discuss when it comes to the Drowzee's defenses, its attacks are a fair bit simpler. Both its fist and headbutt, each respectively based off of the pound and headbutt moves it can learn, only use a moderate 2-hit bonus. They come with decent traits. Agile helps secondary attacks, while Forceful ramps up in damage, but that fist strike still only deals low damage, and even its headbutt, its more powerful attack, only hits for moderate damage. There isn't much here, but that is all because, as has been mentioned, the Drowzee is primarily built as a caster. Occult innate spells made the most sense for a psychic Pokemon, and the Drowzee uses a high DC for these spells, which have a focus on mental damage, such as Daze and Phantom Pain. More central to its kit, however, is Sleep, a spell based on its Hypnosis move, an ability that the Drowzee starts with. Along with that, both the Drowzee's Confusion and Psy Beam moves can cause the Confusion status, which is why the Drowzee has a single spell punching above its level, Confuse at 4th rank. It only has a single casting of the spell, and I've looked at it, I've talked about it with my test subjects for the Monster Mash, and it doesn't seem too crippling, which is why I felt fine including it in this instance. However, Sleep is still the core of its kit, and a number of its abilities are factored around it, starting with Hypnosis. This is named after the actual ability that inflicts sleep in Pokemon, and has the visual trait, but it is actually designed after the Witch's Veil of Dreams focus spell, where that is one action, this is two, because this effect doesn't need to be sustained. On a failure, a creature suffers the effects for a full minute. It is somewhat intentional that this can't be used in the same round as Sleep itself, preventing the Drowzee from taking a PC out of the fight in a single turn. But even without the sleep effects, this has some nice debuffing going on, making it a useful effect just to throw out there. Now, you may be asking, what's a Drowzee do once it has a creature asleep? Any damage dealt to the creature just wakes it up, it's not a combat sort of spell, BB! Well, you're right, I'll admit, but at the same time, you're oh so wrong. At least in this specific instance, for the Drowzee has Rough Dreams. This ability means that mental damage it and its spells deal don't automatically wake up the creature, and instead require that creature to attempt a moderate DC will saves, only waking up on a success. This allows the Drowzee to plague its sleeping victims with nightmares without them awakening, meaning that the hero's allies may have to spend actions to save them instead. On top of all that, the Drowzee has the Eat Dream reaction. Now, this is kind of a weird one. Drowzee and Hypno are heavily associated with the move Dream Eater. It's even mentioned in their lore. But the weird thing is, they don't actually learn it naturally. They can learn it through TMs, but it isn't on their move list. Nevertheless, since the Drowzee is inspired by the Baku, a dream-munching monster of myth, and it is so heavily tied to its design, I wanted to include an aspect of it. In that case, this reaction. It triggers when the Drowzee deals mental damage to a sleeping creature, and helps fortify it a little bit, getting it some temp HP or healing it. And this is also why I stayed away from a high pool of hit points. It can be a little difficult to trigger with having to stack things up, make sure a creature is actually asleep, and then still having them fail, or at least take a good bit of mental damage to use it, which is why it does give the Drowzee a nice bit of health. Wrapping up the Drowzee's abilities, there is its Forewarnings, drawn from its Forewarn ability. In Pokemon, this lets it learn a move that the enemy has, but that doesn't work quite as well in Pathfinder. For my adaptation of it, I settled on a single action that gives it a defensive bonus against its target's next attack or effect. While not a match in mechanics, I feel like it's there in spirit at the very least. However, I was a little concerned with the Drowzee spamming this, so to keep that from happening, and just becoming untouchable to a single creature, it can only target the same creature once per minute. And that gives us the Drowzee. This dour and droopy dream devourer dares to dive into dire danger as it delights in draining delusions from daring doers. This was a fun little dude to put together, and the test for it went well, though as a caster type creature, it wasn't entirely well suited for being the single adversary in an easy encounter. It still got to pull off a few of its tricks, but this is definitely a creature that becomes more dangerous in groups or when there's other targets. Even a gang of Drowzee can prove rough as they link their hypnosis and sleep spells, potentially taking a creature out of the fight within a round. It could also be fun to run a Drowzee as some sort of familiar or companion to a witch, specifically one that has Veil of Dreams to compound with the Drowzee sleep. Be sure to let me know what you think of this pudgy pocket monster and which others you would like to see, or similar creatures. I've looked at PALs, and they're a little light on info, but if there's one you want to see from PAL World, I could always take a crack at it. If you do want to see more of this creature though, you can head over to the blog or Twitter, linked in the description. Thanks for watching, and have a monstrous Monday.
Drowzee.